Welcome to today's local government education program provided by the University of Illinois Extension. I'm Nancy Wodralgo, Community and Economic Development Specialist for U of I Extension. And before introducing the topic and presenter today, I wanted to let participants know that for sound, we'll mute all the microphones during the presentation. And at any time, you should write any questions into the chat space. That goes for technical issues that you might be having, and we'll be able to take care of you if you need to troubleshoot. Please note you're going to receive a copy of the slides today and links to resources during the session, and as well as a recording for today's webinar. So today's webinar is being presented by Joseph Maluel. He is a new addition to our community and economic development team here in Illinois. He has extensive experience that I'll go over here in a moment, but we're just so happy to have him on presenting today to talk about his approach to poverty and to working with communities to address poverty-related issues. And so I spoke with Joseph before this webinar, a month or two before the webinar. Was really excited to see the work he'd done. He took this this program approach to the national level and was able to feature it at the national level. And it has, I hope that everybody will really see the mindful and wonderful strengths that were brought to this approach today. So we had a discussion, and I had agreed to give a little bit of remarks. Joseph has worked in other parts of the country. I told him I'd give a very, very short set of remarks just about the situation of poverty in Illinois. There are some statistics that we're still waiting on in Illinois. But before the pandemic in 2018, we had a 4% unemployment rate at the state level. We had a 12% poverty rate at the state level. And those statistics are from the Heartland Alliance Illinois Poverty Report from 2018. They also cited that there were 16 per 1,000 teen births, and the high school graduation rate was at 86%. And that, overall, this all contributes to the poverty rate. And now the census and some other data collection entities are looking at poverty rate in their own way. We've looked at emergency food assistance across the state and other aspects. And based on a few different sources, it would be perhaps around 20%. But what we do see is that the unemployment rate has risen from 4% to 7.1%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. On a bright side, the CDC has documented that the teen birth rate actually did decrease during the pandemic, and it is now at 14.6 per 1,000. The Illinois report card is a great, if you search Illinois report card, it's a great source to look at Illinois State Board of Education data on the graduation rate. However, some of that data is not complete. You'd have to look down at the district level to see some of that information for your locality. And at the state level, it's not, that piece of data is not available. So just a little bit of an overview for Illinois regarding some of the poverty statistics out there. So it just gives us an idea that this is just an appropriate program more than ever. So we really want to thank you, Joseph, for being here and promoting this program and promoting Hope, Health, and Healing, and speaking about your innovative solutions and recommendations to unlock potential and address poverty in your community. Without further commentary, I'm going to pass it over to you. Thanks again for being here. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you very much, Nancy, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. This is a topic that is very dear to my heart, and I start my work on poverty in Sub-Saharan Africa with
Joseph. You're going to want to display the full slide again. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is it okay now? Or okay.
Try one more time. Slideshow, and then
Yeah.
Yep.
That
Perfect.
works?
Now it looks great.
Okay. So I was going to say that I started my work on poverty in sub-Saharan Africa. And then later on, when I started working in the US, especially in rural communities, I noticed that people in rural areas are facing similar issues. And then I borrow from what I did in sub-Saharan Africa and use it during my work in Wisconsin in particular, sometime in Iowa too. So Nancy and I talked about this topic a while ago when I attended a poverty simulation presentation where we went through some exercise. And this program came to my mind, and then I shared with Nancy and say, you know what, I actually did some work like this, and I share the topic, and Nancy say, yeah, let's just share it with the community here. So I'm very happy to be here and talking about this. You see the word hope and healing. Those words didn't come from me. You will know, you will learn later on that this came from a community that I work with, but I did some research to make them meaningful and applicable in their community. So bear with me with those. Again, put your question again on the chat, and we will be addressing them at the end of this as possible. So just Nancy just talk about the statistics here in Illinois. I just took some ideas about how we view and how we look at poverty, and then different variety of measuring and conceiving and conceptualizing it. And in the United States and other countries, we tend to use economic as the measure of poverty. And so, as you see there, what you see there is how poverty is determined and decided by the government of the United States. So, the figure, the amount of dollar you see on the right side are the threshold for, let's say, for example, if you have 4 people in your family, let's say 2 kids, four people in the family, if you are making $30,000, 320, that is a gross annual income, before tax. If you're making this a month, then you are considered to be above the poverty line. And you can go on with, the number of people. Also, if you are one person, the assumption is that if you are making $14,000 a year in annual income, gross annual income, then you are not poor. And this is very interesting. We'll be talking about that later, how, $30,000, for example, will feed a family of 4. But that is the monetary measurement of poverty. And then I look at the noise, Nancy discussed this. Look at the data that is available. This is from the United States Bureau of Census Bureau. I think the data was gathered by the American Community Survey, but this is what the estimate that they have for Illinois. My work experience is that these national data do have some. They are not exactly what is being experienced at the local level. So when I was at my other work, I actually used local data that people think is actually measure their situation. But this is what we have at the national level. And I just picked some of the categories and socioeconomic and socio-demographic that are highly represented in poverty. So you see children are highly represented in poverty. You go to race and ethnicity, you see African American highly represented, and also other ethnic group. And then you can go also by educational attainment. Educational attainment, I just picked, less than high school and high school graduates. They are also highly represented in poverty. This is Illinois. But again, this data could be different if you're looking from very close from the from the local perspective. So when we talk about poverty, I just mentioned about the monetary measurement of poverty and how it is conceptualized. It is based on consumption. How much do you consume? If you have shortfall in consumption, then you are poor based on that measurement. But that is not the only way that people look at poverty. There is another approach called capability approach that was championed by Amartya Sen. That is a Nobel Prize winner economist that look at poverty and disagree with the monetary measurement and instead think that it should be focused on the indicators of freedom to live valued life. Poverty is not only monetary or consumption, it is also determined by how free you are where you live in the society and the choice that you make about the type of life you want to live. So they look at poverty as a deprivation or a failure to achieve certain minimal or basic capabilities. And basic capabilities is defined as the ability to satisfy certain crucially important function up to certain minimal adequate levels. And so when you look at families, you look at their capabilities, and I'm going to talk about that later on, but you look at how capable they are to perform some function that would allow them to enjoy that freedom of life or live the life that they value. That should be how we should look at the poverty according to Sen. And then you have another approach called social exclusion. This came from Europe, and it was actually designed by industrialized countries, which look at poverty as a process through which individuals or groups are wholly or partially excluded from full participation in the society in which they live. So they look at this, poverty is a social exclusion. It is not a monetary or a capability. This is how they look at it. And then the last one is called participatory approach. This was championed by Robert Chambers in UK. And he disagreed with this concept, saying that they were externally imposed. These are just designed by some people without consulting the people who live in poverty themselves. So the people in poverty should at least have some say about how they define it before we come as academic and the governments and influential people to create this. So there are 3-4 different ways of looking at poverty. These are very theoretical, but I just want to mention that as I do this presentation, keep those in mind because they are going to resonate with what I did and how I actually do poverty work in my work in community and economic development. And so Robert Chambers, sorry?
Just to mention, Joseph, that I still see the poverty guidelines slide, and I don't know if you meant to still be on that slide or not.
No, I actually advanced to the other one. I don't know why it's not showing.
We thought you maybe did, but I didn't want to interject too early because I wasn't for sure.
It says screen share is paused. How does that work? Should I stop and resume share? Okay, I don't know why.
Resume, yeah, maybe resume and then, yes, use the buttons at the bottom there.
I'm very sorry, yeah, but those are things that I was talking about. And we're going to share this slide and people can read. But again, those are the concept in which poverty is being, conceptualized and evaluated by different communities and different, academic and influential group in the world. So I talk about those already. And so in light of all those 4 measurement of poverty or concepts about what poverty is, I always like to look at how Nelson Mandela of South Africa looked at it. Nelson said, like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. It is man-made and can be overcome and eradicated by the action of human beings. So if you look at those conceptualization, if it is social exclusion, then who is excluding who? So there has to be a human dimension to it. If it is a capabilities issues, if we have different capabilities to perform function that would give us the opportunity to live the life that we want, then why do we have different capabilities? Okay. And you can think about the participatory approach. Okay, our people who are in poverty, do they have any influence on programs and policies that try to address it? So how do we address poverty? Of course, it is determined by how we define it. This is how we define it in an economic sense. So when we do that, then we approach it this way. In the United States, at least, and other countries, developed countries, we have safety nets that we have. Whether it's different public assistance, from food stamp to cash assistance to everything that you can think about that are social safety net, or even within the community, such as food pantry and anything that community can do to try to reduce poverty. Then we have unemployment, job creation and training. Also, another way that we try to approach poverty, which is actually informed by that economic conceptualization of poverty. Education, you can talk about the early childhood education. The idea is that, if we can put kids in schools early enough, they will be able to function better when they grow up as adults. Housing, affordable housing, now we have tax credit. All those are a variety of ways that society is trying to address poverty in the United States and other countries as well. That brings me to my work. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that one, but that brings me to my work in rural Wisconsin. There I was a community and economic development in Wisconsin and in rural areas of Wisconsin. And that county happened to be going through a lot of issues at that time. I started this job in 2015. At the time when I arrived, there were a lot of issues in the community, surprisingly to me, a variety of issues, growing problems. The director of human services came and said, we have had a growing poverty in this county for the last 10 years, that the number of people applying for public assistance are increasing every year. Even there was a time when the recession kind of eased and jobs were available, but even that, poverty in Wisconsin with that full employment never moved an inch. So there was a problem. In line with that, there was increased use of illegal drugs, meth in particular, and opioid went into the rural areas in a very, very bad way. Mental health was a little more concern. Increased rate of suicide was there. The first time when I went to that county, I went to church with my family, and the first thing that came that we heard was suicide was a problem in that place. Family breaking up, children taken away from parents, that is related to drug use and other issues related to poverty. Food insecurity was pervasive, homelessness, and all those stretch all the resources of the community. So a group of leaders in the community decided that they cannot just sit and wait. They had to do something about it. And so for 2 years before I started my job, they were thinking, meeting, and thinking about what can we do? And so when, how did I get to that? I did some strategic planning for a group called Trauma Informed Care Group. And that group included the director of human services. And when we were done, he told me that you need to come and help us with something that we have been trying to do for now 2 years, and we just circling around. Can you come and help us with the strategic planning? That's how I got into this group. So the group consists of all these people. These are just some that I remember, but different people, very energetic and trying to change the situation in their country. So human services was actually the champion. The director was the champion. The director of public health was there. School districts were represented, United Way, hospitals, local hospitals, church leaders, homeless shelters. And the justice system, that means the judges, the police department, and all, that group was also represented. Community members, business owners were there. People with lived experience. And I will, discuss why we need these members of the community to be part of this. And then organizations. And then extension. That was my role as an extension educator, was to facilitate and do research and conduct strategic planning. That was my role. And then we had different other groups that I didn't mention here. So you had a diverse group of people with different background, educationally, experience-wise, capable of doing this. So the first thing we did was to create something that they call a desired future state, what they want that county to look like. And that county had a population of about 46,000 population, the entire county. Very rural, half of it actually 48% rural. So I walked them through the process of, think about this as strategic planning, okay, developing a mission or vision for your organization, but they wanted to be called desired future state. And so I walked them through the process, and what they wanted was partner with families and communities. I just took away the name of the county to facilitate hope, healing, and health, to address root causes of challenges facing children, families, and communities. And how do they do it? By creating holistic and family-driven social and health services systems that strengthen family resources. That family resource is very important. That's a key point. Building trusting relationship, another key point. Eliminating institutional barriers, that is another key point. And then they want to develop an integrated system, service system, so that there's a more collaboration and not confusion, but to collaborate and work together to maximize that impact so that there's no fragmentation of services or duplication of services. That was their what they want to see in their county. So then now you saw hope and healing and health. I'm a sociologist, partly sociologist, but I'm not a psychologist or a counselor or anything like that. Even though I had a background in counseling, I've done mental health for off and on for 15 years in Iowa and Virginia. But I don't see myself as a psychologist or something like that. So I had to go and dig. What do you mean by hope? Anything we do in the community, we have to find a way to measure it. So what do you mean by hope and healing? I had no clue that hope and healing were actually a concept that were theorized and actually could be measured. That was a big learning to me. So I went and looked at the literature of hope. What does it mean? And then I came across Charles Snyder. That is the leading theorist on this. And he defined hope as a cognitive set that is based on reciprocal drive sense of successful, A, agency, that means goal-oriented determination, and B, pathways, that means planning of ways to meet goals. That is how he conceptualized and defined it. That is a little difficult to interpret. Of course, you can read through all what he has to be able to understand what does this really mean. And then that wasn't enough. I needed to get more a clear definition of hope. And then I went to Lopez that defined hope as human strengths manifested in capacity to A, clearly conceptualize goal, that is goal thinking, develop specific strategies to achieve goals. That capacity need to be there, called a pathway, and then sustain the motivation for using those strategies, agent thinking. That means you can change. You can see those two definitions are not very different, but the other one is clear. So still, my team wanted to borrow from that and make their own, that they can understand, that anybody in the community could understand what it really means. So from those two, they came up with the one that you see, the third one. So they define hope as a sense of purpose and cognitive ability to create own goals, want to create their own goals, develop various strategies to achieve goals, and sustain motivation to achieving the goal regardless of constraints and challenging phase. That was their definition of what the working definition of hope, which is not really very different from what you see. Now we have something that we can measure. Now I went to healing, and actually hope came from a positive psychology. That is where the background came from. Then I went to look at healing. What does it mean to heal? Because the community told me that people are hurting, people are having problems. There is a problem, people are hurting and they need to be healed. They need to have hope. they are losing hope. So I look at the healing literature, and I found this to be very interesting. We didn't change anything as you look at it because it's very clear. So fifth, define healing as a holistic, transformative process of repair and recovery in mind, body, and spirit, resulting in positive change, finding meanings, a movement towards self-realization of wholeness, regardless of the present or absence of disease. So basically, hope and cure are different. So I mean, healing and cure are different. You could be cured from a disease, but you are not healed. That is the perspective that is here. You are healed by being satisfied. And what is the ingredient of that satisfaction? Satisfaction is social relationship and social support. So both hope and healing are basically informed by social support and meaningful, authentic relationship. And it's not only a relationship, it's a network that somebody could use to navigate the system and being able to actually achieve that hope as defined up there. If you are somebody who would like to read this stuff, I do have references, you can get it later. But what I say is it just has been a good learning and fascinating. So this resonated with the group that this is what they want to do, but how do you do it? Okay. And I just include this to show you that, hope as a robust measurement scale. So that is just a scale that they have for adults, they have for children. And so you can complete that. We didn't do that, but you can complete that scale. And then they have a way to analyze and place you as a high hope, low hope, or something like that. And the higher you are on the hope scale, the more likely that you're going to be able to pursue, to actually be able to conceptualize goal, finding ways, a pathway to achieve the goal, and sustaining that motivation. So to do this, how do we do that? How do we know the hope of the families that are seeking help? How do we know? So the idea was we have to find from them. Now, this is a people-centered approach that I use that you will see later on. As I was sitting in the group, every time I come out, I use a grounded theory approach just to understand what the people are saying and try to place those under a certain concept of theoretical perspective so that I'm not dictating the theory to fit, but actually fitting the ideas into the theory that would be fitting them. So we agreed that, okay, then let's find out, what do people think, what do families, how do they consider hope, goals, what are their priorities? We need to know this. Then we want to know the root causes of challenges, because you cannot address the issue if you don't know the root causes. So in one of the slides that I showed, there was a little tray. I didn't talk about that, but we use that root cause analysis, that when you have a tray, the leaves are symptoms of a problem. The problem is in the middle, but that problem has root causes. Those are the roots under, different layers of root causes. We want to know what they were. Then they wanted to know if the services that we are offered in the county actually we are meeting those hopes and goals. That was agreed by the entire group. And I just had to do that. I didn't make them up. They did it themselves. I will walk them through the process. And those are the objectives. Now, the last one that is assess natural support system in the community. That was my own because I understand the role of support system or network in healing and in hope, and even in thriving in a community moving forward. What did we do? So we took a random samples from families that are household that we are getting public assistance. We took a samples of that group, random sampling we did, and we wanted to get 180 households. That way we can, play around and make sure that we get enough population to interview. But we were able to interview 19 out of that, and then 20 others. But that's another group that was under a program called Recovery Code. I think they used to call it drug code. So we chose to go with a qualitative approach, which is talking with the people themselves and actually visit their places if they like to them. So moving forward then, and that also provide you with kind of field observation. Before that, we did not know that people actually would be willing to sit down with somebody and talk about their hope and healing and what they want to see. What I did was I recruited a person, a business owner, who was very interested in actually addressing this issue. And I trained her how to conduct interviews and actually get data, important data from the families, from the samples. But we were always together. Either she asked the question and I type, or she typed and I asked the questions. It was very, very interesting. The welcoming, people say they never had anybody in their life asking them what their problem were and what they think should be done, ever. We always shot for 45 minutes. Sometimes we stay for 2 hours, and then we had to cancel some of the conversation because they want to talk. They want to let you know what they're going through. Now, surprisingly, when we try to know from them what hope was, it wasn't different from the theory that we actually just read to you. Hope for them was having good health and be happy, be self-sufficient, being able to own and maintain a house, healthy and successful children, and the recovery from various types of illness. This is the hope that is not unique to this population. All of us would like to see something like that. But those are their hopes, and they believe that one day they could get there. Their goals, what were their goals? They want to get employment so they can be self-sufficient. None wanted to be on a public assistance. They want to be able to go and actually work and get off and contribute. Illnesses. Almost every family that we talked with had, and that was random sampling, all of them, 100%, they had some major health issues in their family, either the parents or some of the children that actually impede their ability to work. They want education for their children. They want them to be successful, not to be fall into the cycle of poverty. Okay, they want to raise them to be good people. They want to have home. Those are the goals. Those are their goals. Now we ask them about, okay, how does, how do services that you receive actually help you with addressing this goal? As you can see, this is not to make any human services or any organization feel bad, but this is what they were thinking. This is expected, and because these institutions are not designed to address root causes, but to actually kind of address symptoms rather than root cause. So they had mixed feeling. They feel that nobody listened to them. Okay, there were no personal relationships. Somebody come and get the signed papers or something, and they go. There are a lot of codes in this that I'm not including here. Lack of coordination. One family in rural area that I interviewed, that went to, they had 8 children. Those 8 children, all of them, they had some issues, health issues, and they had 14 social workers going into that house to work with those children. So you can see how that can be really, really very, and they don't coordinate. There's no coordination. They complain about getting relevant information. Okay, you go to somewhere, they give you a paper, say, this is what the paper is, you just go and read, and then you should be able to navigate that one. They put it away, they can't do anything about it. Long waiting for health services, especially mental health, because of, the rural areas do have these problems. One person say, by the time we got the services, things were already out of control. So you have kids with mental health or behavioral issues, health issues, and then you have to wait for 2 years to be able to get the services that you need. And by that time, things are out of control. They also thought that some of the social workers were not knowledgeable about the situation. So I look at their major support system. What is the support system that you have? Most of them, almost 180%, said either immediate family, mostly moms and grandmas. Those were the people that they relied on. No community participation. There was reason for that. Some of them say they don't fit to go to, they feel judged even to go to park, leave alone, the church or temple. Yes, I mentioned that all of them had some health issues. And that made us wonder, how about if you look at the entire population and see what they were had with all this? Trauma was prevalent, and then low education too, and that's relative. Okay, so now that brings me to how I look at this. That is what I call innovation. So you have leadership and people who want to do something, okay? I want to be able to conceptualize this within the development, okay? So what does this mean? So quest for comprehensive framework to analyze this. The picture you see there, it was sent to me by somebody that I interviewed, and that person was in jail. After we finished talking, he went to the sheriff and she drew this and she said, you take this to the extension to Joseph and let it look at it. So that made me think about, okay, how can we do this? And as you can see, it's very holistic. That is the hope that they have as image. And when you talk about image, who are they? They are the people with low education, people who are highly represented in poverty. So it's not by accident. Why is it not moving now? Okay. And when I look at the concept that would fit this, I went back to my early work on poverty in Africa. This is a concept called sustainable livelihood. During the development in developing countries, a lot of organizations in the West will go to developing countries and try to tell them what to do. For decades, nothing worked. Then Robert Chambers and Gordon Conway came with this perspective, which is really not no brainer. This need to be, you don't want someone to do something for you. You want them to help you actually do what you need to do. So a sustainable livelihood framework came to my mind to use in that rural communities, which I never thought I would use this in the United States because I didn't understand the level of poverty in the US coming from Africa. Okay, so a livelihood comprises of capabilities, assets. Those include both material and social, because we think of asset as social or materials. We forget the social part of it. And activities required for means of living. A livelihood is sustainable when it can cope with and recover from stresses and shocks. Okay, this is very important, that the livelihood is only sustainable if it can cope with and recover from stresses and shock. And I will define what those are. This speaks to resilience. Okay, maintain or enhance its capabilities and assets. Okay, it should not exhaust the asset, but it should actually enhance and maintain them so that it sustains itself for a long time, while not undermining the natural resource base. That part is a rural dimension to that rural dimension of this sustainable livelihood. The livelihood framework, people-centered, okay, is a strength base. So it's centered on people, and then let them choose their priorities, help them with how they do it, and let them do it. And it is holistic, okay? You try to address not the symptom, but the entire, the cause and all that. So that is the framework. That is how the framework looks like. The way you look at the thing is just a simplified way. You want to read, you can get it later on. But all of us, including people, the family who are seeking help, or those who are able to do, pursue their own happiness with capabilities, we are all in a context of vulnerability. We are always vulnerable to something, all of us. Okay, and I will talk about that. This could be like, let's say, shock. Okay, shock could be an economic downturn. It could be a pandemic that we had was a shock. It could be a natural disaster that shock. And then trends. Okay, in the developing countries, it would be like a droughts. You don't have rain and things like that. Then you have that problem, and then you have the seasonality. I think that are seasonal. Okay, if you are dependent on agriculture for your work, what happens when there's no agriculture? So you are vulnerable to a variety of things. Could be political things too, but you have to have that capability. See, when you look at the livelihood assets, okay, they are defined up there on the top of the right. You have human capital, natural capital, financial capital, physical capital, and social capital. So you need that asset to be able to mitigate the impact of your vulnerability. Okay, if you are well positioned, you can cope with the pandemic. If you are not well done, you're going to go down. You're going to rely on the safety net. Then your livelihood assets, that capability that you have, the social capital, the human, and all that, they influence and they are influenced by the transforming process. Those are the structures, okay? The government, the organization, the private sectors, and also the processes, the laws, policy, culture, and institution, they mediate, okay? They can be influenced by our capabilities, or they can influence our capabilities. And they determine what type of livelihood you're going to choose, okay? You have an outcome of that livelihood. This is what I want to achieve. But I have to deal with all those processes to navigate them and be able to achieve that I want to achieve, okay? That is where the discussion comes into play. So I used sustainable livelihood, when I was doing my master's degree. And then when I went into my PhD, I learned that the livelihood had some deficiency. It's being criticized by not including the issue of power and culture. And so if you know Neil Flora and Ian Flora, they were my mentor during my graduate school. Actually, Neil was even during my master studies. They got me into thinking about these two things that the culture and the political capital. And so I had to integrate those two into the livelihood approach to make it more stronger. So then I opened up the sustainable livelihood and made it richer to address the things that were brought up in that country that I work with. So now you see again, you have the shops, everything else, except that I included the cultural capital and political capital into the livelihood. And so down you will see the analysis of main factors affecting livelihood. Again, you can put yourself, I can put myself, you can put yourself in that hexagon there. I don't know if that's hexagon. You can put yourself there as a person and think about what you are vulnerable for. And think about your capacity as a person to actually deal with that vulnerability and how you navigate the structures and the policies. Because if you are not well equipped with a variety of, your social network, your human capital, your cultural knowledge, your political capital, if you are not equipped very well, then chances are that they are going to restrict your ability to actually achieve your outcome. And so when you have people, you analyze them. What are they vulnerable to? Think about the people who are receiving public assistance. What are their vulnerability contact? Okay. Then what type of asset do they have? Now think about those assets. Those are the community capital framework assets. Okay. What are they? Then think about the structures that we have and the processes. Those are systemic things. Think about those. How do they actually restrict, or how do they mediate these individual livelihood strategies? Okay. Now think about those family. What are their livelihood strategies? What do they do? Do they work? What kind of job are they doing? Some people, are they, a member of? This is not for the family, but just think about the livelihood strategies in general, because this is where the problem is. So if your goal is to get something and the mean to get it is lacking, then you are more likely to break societal norms, and then you have consequences as a result. Okay, and so we have people who are resorting to either selling, illegal drugs or doing things that are illegal because that's the mean of their livelihood strategies. how do society respond to something like that? And what outcome do they want to get? So you can see I adapted the sustainable livelihood made up from the community capital framework to come up with this for that particular community. Okay, so we talk about, okay, let's just think about the people that come to the door. And by the way, in the process of reading this, I learned that one of the articles that I read said that 75% of women in particular who seek assistance, public assistance, has or have a trauma in their life. 75% of women who go to human service, other places, they have trauma in their life. So we take that concept, that trauma-informed kind of approach, and think about, okay, if you have somebody who is come to your door, human services or your public health, and they're looking for assistance, who are they? Do you know? Of course, nobody knows because people are, we have few staff that are really overworked and, they just don't have time to know. You come here, you are a number, you take your information, please go away. I have a lot of things to do. We said, okay. And this is how to achieve hope. It turns out that we need to work very hard as communities, leaders, and organizations to achieve hope. It wasn't an optimism. It is something that you have to work for. And even the people that the participants recognize that. So let's say, who is this person? We don't know. Okay. Well, let's do something. And that idea came from a nurse who had worked there for over 30 years. And she saw this over and over again, and she fed up with it. And she said, we need to find a way to know who are coming to our door and what are their needs, not to just, treat them and give them education, but let's just know what are they, and maybe we can connect them with some organization. So we come up with that Jill, okay? That person is called Jill. And who are, if you go deeper into who that person was, then it turns out that she is somebody, a 33-year-old divorced, insulin dependent. I don't like to use the insulin dependent diabetic, because it's a person, but that's how they put it. Had anxiety, depression, self-medicated with THC, had one free school child with a seizure, one school age child with LD. I don't know what LD is. 11th grade education limited. That is the education of that person with limited reading. Now think about how that will affect that child. And minimum wage, one bedroom, old car, unreliable car, has a criminal record. The people that I interviewed, many of them fit this. This was made up. I don't know if it was made up, but this fit many people that I interviewed. So, well, now we know what the person is. Okay, now they come to your door. As a community, you have to find a way to know this person. If you want to build your hope and healing and actually interrupt the cycle of poverty, that is what it would take. Okay. And so you have, this person is vulnerable to a variety of things. Okay. Health, relapse, economic trend, if there's no job, they are going to be in trouble. Anything that can, even politics, culture, because they feel like they're being judged. Now we look at their livelihood assets, okay? H now is a human capital, okay? The human capital is very low, so you have low self-esteem, lack of confidence, health issues associated with addiction, less than high school. So the human capital is really very low there. Then you come to the social capital, which is actually a relationship and network that people use to liberate resources. Okay, just think about getting unemployment. You need some connection. The type of social capital this individual had was what we call bonding social capital. That means it's a relationship within the people who are similar to them. There's no bridging. They don't have any connection with people who are higher than them, because that is very critical. So you have horizontal connection with the people like you. If they have problems, then you're going to share that problem. Their perspective is the same, so there's no shame. Okay, but it's very important for people to get by. And then think about their political capital. No access to power, no voice in community decision making, and they say that. Okay, Political capital is your ability to be able to broker power, to liberate power and influence institution and have your decision count in the community. These people with poverty don't have that opportunity. Now, make you to think about that, the definition, the capabilities and social exclusion. And think about Nelson Mandela, that it is a man-made and it can be changed by the action of men. So one way or another, we are all, whether we know it or not, we actually participate in this. Okay, cultural capital with C, that is a stigma. Okay, that stigma not only affect the adult, but also the kid in the school. How do I know? They told me that their kids are being judged, are being bullied because of that. The feeling of rejection, people don't feel like they are part of the community. And then the F, financial capital, of course, limited income from work, no saving, lack of credit to access loan, no retirement, no other investment, zero. Okay, so we think about financial as an income, but it is a variety of things. And that's where poverty is so expensive. You don't have good credit, guess how much interest you're going to pay? You want to buy a car, you're going to pay a lot of interest. Anything you do is going to cost you more than somebody with a good credit. Natural capital, okay, nobody own land. Don't participate in hunting. You don't go hunting. Hunting is a big deal in Wisconsin, but these people, because they don't have the capacity to do so. Fishing, they don't enjoy that recreation. And then housing and transportation, computer technology, all those are low. Okay, so think about the hope. If we're going to help people achieve hope and healing and goal, we have to do everything. Anything we do to help them is to build those assets, livelihood assets, and see them grow. Okay, and when they grow, they're going to spiral up. Okay, so we have the individual. Let's see what are the processes do. Okay, you have the transforming structure and process. So they may be participating in a recovery court that require them to work 40 hours a week to avoid being in jail. That is the condition to be there. In fact, it actually impedes their even healing. They have to pay child support. They have to, driving license, all that you have. Some people are released from jail. They had to come up with 300 and something for something. They cannot do it. They drive without the license. They go back to jail. Employers, community school, all those processes, they actually hurt more than helping the people who are poor, at least from this research. Livelihood strategies, that's what they do. What do? You depend on food pantry, maybe you work some low job, anything that people can find. That is the livelihood strategies. The outcome is inconsistent with all that. Okay, you cannot recover unless if your assets are built and then you can navigate. Okay, sorry about that. Now, and the thing about this is that this framework, not only, it didn't only change the organization, but also the individual themselves. When I presented with this framework and they put themselves in that sustainable livelihood, they become aware of their own vulnerability. They actually put themselves there and they say, if I can grow this capital, then it will grow this capital. And then you will have a spiral up. So that's an example that I give to these individuals. You are arrested, okay? Your name is in the news. This is spiraling down. Look at the left side. You are in the news, arrested, mass mom, everywhere. People, and this is very small town, and this is really true, what I'm saying. So then what happens is that you're going to lose your job. And when you lose your job, you're going to lose your house. And then you have this social stigma that you're going to be hiding because the community is just mad at you because you were called a meth mom or something. And then all that idea about, self-worth, who you are, you don't fit, you are hiding, become an issue. Okay. And sometimes, the result is that people will start to contemplate even about, why should I live? So then we started thinking about, okay, how can we reverse that spiraling down? Okay, well, the key to this, and this is the research base, is bridging social capital. A bridging social capital is the type of relationship and network that you have with people who are actually more higher than you, either their education or political abilities or their connection. You need that bridging social capital. Okay, with experts, people in the organization, intentionally build this one. When you build that, okay, networking, you're going to be access information. Okay, that information will get you connected to people. You will participate in the community. You're going to, and the hope is going to rise. It's going to go. You're going to go up, and then you start to have that self-worth, and being part of the community. You're going to enhance your health, the human capital, the mental health, your ability to function, and then you participate in a political activities. In fact, we have 2 people that came from this that actually become now activists. They go to medicine once in a while. They go nationally advocating because that's what their dream, their hope was, to be able to have their voice heard. Okay, outcome, many of them. So as a result of this work, we develop or revise some of the strategic planning of this organization to address root causes: public health, human services, public health. CJCC is called Criminal Justice Collaboration Council. This is a court related. They share all the strategic planning. Collaboration increase, they start to talk together, even they want to centralize intakes so that there's no duplication of services or even confusing the people. Livelihood asset increase for 7 inmates. People that we interview during when they were in jail, when they were released, they actually came to extension and they say, we want to be part of this, and they formed their own organization. Believe it or not, even now that I moved to Illinois, they still contact me about issues, about how to navigate those issues. And it's just amazing. Okay. Other counties around us, at that time, they wanted to adopt this sustainable livelihood. Unfortunately, I had to leave Wisconsin and come here to Illinois, which I also like. This program, as Nancy mentioned, was actually selected to be presented at Washington, D.C. during the American Public Health Service Association. It was presented by the community member that I trained to do this research and the director of human services, because I couldn't go at that time. Many more implications. Just an example of what a mission, what has changed. Look at the CJCC, okay? Their original mission is number one, the first one was the County Criminal Justice Collaboration Council provides coordinated leadership and innovation within the criminal justice system with the goal of creating a crime-free society. Just look at that from a person-centered approach. What is being targeted here? Creating a crime-free society. That is true. But that kind of language shaped the way we look at the people, okay? Because we look at them as crime, and to make the society, community free, we have to find a way to contain them. That means lock them up. So that discussion that included even the people that we interviewed, they came actually into the committee and they revised that mission, and it reads like the second one. So the mission now is to provide opportunities for individuals involved in the criminal justice system to improve quality of life through facilitating recovery and community integration using evidence-based innovation program. Now you start to see the mindset, the change in mindset. Okay, now looking at the people, talking about the quality of life and actually improving them, and as a result, we're going to have a crime-free society. That discussion was so crucial to me, that change in mindset, and there are many organizations that did this, including the county itself. Okay, that is what I had I was able to share, within this time frame, and I wanted, I don't know what the time is, Nancy, but if there's time.
So we are past the 1 o'clock hour, but I still want to give participants a chance to ask their questions. I believe someone actually tried to unmute themselves. You can speak up, sir.
And those are my references, the 2 of them.
Okay. Well, we have a question in the chat. Joseph, very interesting presentation. I will watch the, oh, she says, what did she say? The lack of or perception of lack of sustainable livelihoods in rural communities, is this the reason why people are feeling hopeless? Did you want to address that?
Oh, okay. Yes. So the livelihood, the livelihood is holistic. It's very difficult to just do it within this presentation. The livelihood is holistic and it's looking at a variety of things that beyond even what the people may actually think themselves. So what I have learned in Wisconsin, and that's one thing that is very, if we want to walk away with one thing, is that in poverty, there is nothing more difficult to not have than human relationship, social capital. So the isolation was obvious. The feeling of not being listened to and being judged and being isolated was everywhere. Even they were surprised, how did we decide to do this? Why did you decide to do this? Who told you to do this? This is very important. Yes, so the livelihood, which is not measured by only material, but also by social, okay, material and social. The idea that people feel like they're dependent for everything that they do it came through everywhere. And they say they were forgotten. And the thing is, I had to do the county-wide strategic planning. And when we did that, we actually used the same concept. And the new county administrator actually went with me to every community, and he was sitting there to listen what they were saying. Okay. People that I work with, sometimes they take time to cry. When people talk about their own life and how this is happening in the United States. Yes. Did I answer the question?
Yes. Yes, thank you. So you had mentioned that in the beginning of your work in this case community that you used this approach in, that there were already people that had been sort of working through these problems for a few years. What do you suggest to participants or anybody else who might be tuning in to look at this framework? What do you suggest for them if they are tasked to do some form of poverty alleviation work in a community or set of communities, but that they're not really, being pulled in, so to speak, rather than assigned? What would you say to that type of sort of springboard concern?
So, as a community, community economic development educator, let me just say community development educator. I always believe that in any community that I have been and I've seen, they always have resources, and this include there are people in the community there that are very concerned about this stuff that actually want to do something. Is how do you organize? How do you recognize and organize those community champions? That is very crucial. So let's say you start with, I would say you start with people that that are actually are concerned about this, and then the power of data. Okay, I didn't share everything that I did here, but the power of data is so crucial because you will be surprised how little knowledge people have about what is going on in their own communities. So sit down, bring 5, 6 people intentionally, who are maybe more influential. Sit down, engage on data regarding your place, and see what the data is telling you and what can you do about it. And I'm not talking about having a large, 50% of population poor. Even having 5% of the population poor in society is not acceptable to me if we can do something about it. That's in my perspective. So you can get that data from human services, from the Christ Center, how many call in, what did they call about? You can go to public health. You can go to the police department. They will tell you exactly what is going on and how it hasn't been increasing, decreasing, and then get that data and engage that group and talk about it, okay? And talk about what is causing it. Ask yourself, can you do something about it? School is another place because in school, they see a lot of issues. Whether it's a school lunch, kids that are being, they are giving them lunch box to take home after school because they have nothing to eat on the weekend. So if that is a phenomenon that is hidden, because food insecurity and poverty is a hidden thing. Those people are very hard to find because for somebody, for a variety of reasons. So you engage that one, and I would encourage you. You have a community and economic development in your county that is the person that can help with this data. I did this data in that county. I didn't have a background to do the hope and healing. It wasn't my subject, but actually I learned a lot, and I was able to distill them to a level where they can be digested and used by anybody. And then there are examples. If somebody is interested, there's an example. This was not done only in Shiva County, but that was our approach. That's why it was selected to be presented Human Services in Washington, D.C. But there is one in South Dakota, and not South Dakota, in Minnesota and Colorado that I can actually connect people with and see how they are changing everything in their community.
That's wonderful. I wanted to bring to your attention that we have some comments in the chat here that are reflecting a concern about the level of government-sponsored programs that are aimed at poverty alleviation. And I wanted to give you a chance to sort of sound back to this concern, and maybe the concern is also in regards to the outlook of allowing people to be self-sufficient and solve their own problems. You do know, you probably are well aware that that there are many different viewpoints about poverty situations in the U.S. Some of the viewpoints are highly political and some are not. But there is a concern about to what level people are autonomous and to what level they can get themselves out of poverty by themselves. And so just to give you an example, the last comment here is saying, to at what point do we have a society that wants us to want for more? Is the hopelessness based on the person's perception that they can't afford, or that they are being told what they should have when really they shouldn't? So there is a sort of and we see this a little bit in our field. We actually offer a program in extension called the Poverty Simulation, and it sort of helps people look at the compound and complex nature of poverty. But Joseph, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to respond and also see what maybe you wanted to highlight there.
Yeah, I think that is really very important. The trust is very important. And when I went to work in that county, Wisconsin, somebody told me that when you go to the rural areas, don't wear your name tag. That is a county name tag. Wear your University of Wisconsin Extension name tag, because if you wear the county name tag, then nobody's going to talk with you. So that is this, and that is very concerning, because the county there is working, trying to improve the condition, but the community are not seeing that. And I actually suggested, can we do something about it to see why people think the way they are? Of course, many things, including zoning and all those stuff, is a chronic issue. But back to the success things, is that what is it like to be successful? For some people, they have not seen it before. I'm not making this up. They told me. Somebody told me, one of the participants say, it is weird to be successful. And she took herself as an example. She said she got out of jail and she said, I'm going to change everything. I have two kids. I'm going to change everything. Then she quit what she was doing that brought her into the jail. And then she got a job, got an apartment, got her kids. And she said because of that success, she feels very weird that she just can't handle it. Okay. I didn't know that could be possible, that you become successful, you become surprised. Okay. So the example that I was using there was that I just say, think about swimming. Okay, so I can give you all the lecture about how to swim, how to move your legs, how to try to float, and let me try to throw you in the pool. Just think about that. You can't do it. Okay, I can give you the best lecture, but once I throw in the pool, you're going to sink for sure. So the idea is that some people, when you look at that picture that I show before, that came from that individual that drew that shows you that this one here, they want somebody to at least call and navigate this to some until they become comfortable. And this person could be any volunteer. Yeah, it could be anybody. So yes, the community, they want to do something about it. The volunteers are there. They don't show up because they want to do something meaningful. So if it's not meaningful, they're not going to do it. But if you make it meaningful, you make them listen, you make them know about what's going on. They are human beings. They will take action and help you. I think that's what I would add. And then there was somebody that there was another interesting remark that I saw here. Somebody said something about if we okay, this is not sub-Saharan Africa. Who in this country has a self-interest in not eliminating poverty? How many people would be put out of work if we were all self-sufficient, supporting ourselves without government help? So that is very interesting. That is in sociology, we do have a concept called functionalism. Okay, if we don't have crime, we don't have police will have no income. Okay, if we don't have people who are poor, then we will have no job. We have all this. That is a very valid point. Okay, but I wouldn't think about it from those families' perspective. Those kids, those are just like our neighbors. Okay, working in the grocery store, who are caring for children daycare. Just if you flip this one, okay, would it be better to maintain people to that level of poverty? Or should, we will always find something. We can always find something. But I understand that point, yes. I think the hope and healing and sustainable livelihood means we're going to work ourselves out of job.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I'm not for sure if...
Another thing, Nancy.
Yes. Yes, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Do you hear me at all?
Nancy, can you hear me?
Okay. For some reason I'm talking, but you cannot hear me. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, yep. Good. Okay. Well, I muted myself and unmuted myself again. Sorry about that. So I do see one more question here. Where do we find statistics and data? I had mentioned, and of course, Joseph, you can also, I'm going to let you sound in first on that, and then I might follow up with a few recommendations.
Yeah, I think that is really very interesting issue. We know that we should have all this everywhere, but you have a variety of sites where they have even discrepancy in how they represent them. I always like local data, but if somebody is looking for national data and things like that, I think we have the capacity here in Extension. Zach, our team member, is there to help. But I also do have, you can always go to the United States Department of Public Health. Do have their data. the Department of Human Services at the national level do have, the U.S. Bureau Census Bureau do have their own, and then there are nonprofit organization and public institutions that do have that. So if you have that specific question, we can connect and maybe with Nancy too, and we can do our best to get you the data for essentially for the local. But the local data is so crucial, and I think even your local Department of Human Services, depending on what you want to investigate, okay, you want to look for looking at health. My strategy was always to go to their annual report and see what stand out there.
That's wonderful. So I also just wanted to add, for some of the information I provided at the beginning of the program today, I looked at the Heartland Alliance. They do an annual Illinois poverty report that kind of brings everything together from many different sources. And I can include a link to that in the follow-up email. But yes, there are many sort of indicators that can comprise into a poverty rate. And so, but I really think that's a great place to start, is with the Heartland Alliance's Illinois Poverty Report. I just think it's a wonderful annual report that they give to other NGOs and public sector, actually anybody who's wanting to use it. So it's a great addition. And yes, we also have many different data resources here at Extension. And so I would encourage you sending an inquiry to our team. You can find our team if you even just search CED, if you go to Illinois, if you go to the extension.illinois.edu website. Okay, and Joseph, thank you for staying on. We're 20 minutes past the hour. I'm glad. Thank you everybody for staying on the program and asking additional questions. We don't have any more questions. I just really want to thank you all for your time today. Thank you, Joseph, as well. Wonderful, great approach that we're going to be able to archive and have on the website. We really appreciate it. So I hope everybody has a really good rest of the day, and thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.